FIDE Grand Swiss tournament is in full swing and there are some absolutely fascinating games. I'd like to show you, for a change, an endgame. So this is a game between Sam Shankland and Firouzja, playing round 5. And you can see that pawn endgame, Firouzja is a pawn up, but doesn't seem to be that useful. In fact, it is very useful. But a really important point is that the king is further up the board, which can often allow the player with that king to penetrate into the opposition position and grab a pawn. So Firouzja played king f4. Now Sam has been under pressure in the endgame for some time. This is a crunch moment. Perhaps Sam believed that he was already lost because he played the next few moves relatively quickly, like he was just going through the motions. But if someone had tapped him on the shoulder here and said, "You can still save the game," then I'm sure he would have found the way to draw. But there was no one to do that. However, I'm tapping you on the shoulder and telling you, you can do this. So here's my challenge for you. Can you work out how white can draw this position? So time to pause the video, perhaps even set up the position on a proper board and have a go at solving it. White to play and draw. So while you're having a think, I'll have a drink. Do you want to improve your chess? Get exclusive access to live masterclasses with yours truly. Get hot opening ideas. Then subscribe to patreon.com/PowerPlayChess, and for just $25 a month, you get a newsletter with a detailed test game to gauge your standard of play. A monthly video with puzzles to test your calculating skills. A monthly opening survey where I give my take on a hot variation. Access to an archive of over 100 opening surveys. Access to video playlists so you can research your favourite openings using the PowerPlayChess archives. And as a patron, you are able to join in the exclusive live masterclasses where you can ask me questions directly. All this for only $25 a month. That's exceptional value. So do subscribe to patreon.com/PowerPlayChess. Enjoy the benefits and improve your chess. First of all, let me show you what happened in the game. So Sam exchanged on a5. Then he played king d4, king f3. He came back to d3, king g2, and king d4. And, well, he resigned about this point, basically. I think he probably resigned after king g2, actually. So let's say king d4, then, of course, black just takes, and the h-pawn goes through very easily. Okay, so what about king e2? Then king takes h2, king f2, and here's why it's very important to have the second h-pawn, because after h4, that's Zugzwang. So the king has to move, and that lets the black king out, and then it can run all the way over to capture the pawn here, and black wins. Now, if we come back to this position, so instead of king d3, king takes d5, unfortunately doesn't work for white. The white king finds itself on a very unfortunate spot. So watch what happens. And this is so common in pawn endgames, that when the queen arrives on the board, something disastrous happens. Whoever queens first has a big advantage. In this case, it's a check. Sometimes there's a mating pattern. Queens are just basically very powerful pieces. So yeah, after the check, then of course it's possible to stop the pawn with the queen, and then it's game over. And yeah, coming back to this position again, king e2 doesn't help because of king e4. If king d2, then king f3, well, we're going to transpose to the other variation. And of course, if king f2, then king here, take the pawn, and this one goes through. And of course, it's way too slow in capturing those h-pawns and running the h-pawn. Black's d-pawn is much faster. So let's go back to the starting position. Taking on a5 is a mistake, and this is now winning for black. But there is a way to draw. Okay, here we go. Are you ready? So first of all, king e2. So that stops the king invading, prevents king f3. Okay, but then king e4. And this looks like the other variation, and we had this with the pawns exchanged, and black was winning then. But in this position, white can still draw, and this is actually quite a well-known concept, but perhaps not so obvious at first glance. b5. So why b5? Well, it's creating a target on b6, really. So watch this. So if d4, so the obvious way to play, now if c4, then black checks, king comes across, and of course that's winning very, very easily. Excuse me. So c5 takes here, here. Black wins. So after d4, c takes, king takes. Now, only one move. Of course, black is going to just march across and take the pawn and queen the a pawn. King f3. Okay, what's the big deal? Because, well, king g3 is just way too slow. Watch what happens here. a4, well, black wins the race very easily. But here is the trick. King f3, king e4. White's king cuts back the other way and heads for the b6 pawn. That's why b5 was absolutely essential. And now again, we have this motif of a pawn queening with check. It's incredible. Even though black queens first, white makes the queen, it's a check, and that should be a pretty easy draw. Wow, just fantastic. But as I said, this kind of idea is actually pretty well known. I could give you some more examples of this. Now, just one more variation. So what happens if, for example, black plays d4? So this is taken, takes, king d3, the king can come across. Now, it's too slow if black's king goes for the h-pawn because the d-pawn runs. So b3, king here, takes, and white is absolutely fine, again heading for the b6 pawn. Of course, this is possible, but white is in time, and yes, black has this extra h-pawn, but this should be a pretty easy draw. I think probably straight away because the king doesn't have good cover in this position because the queen is so badly placed. So anyway, that's a draw. There you go. So the solution in this position is king e2 and the key move b5. Wow. It is a well-known motif, but when you've been under pressure for a long time and it looks absolutely hopeless, and there's no one tapping you on the shoulder, one can miss this kind of defense very, very easily. Well, at the top, we have Parham Marsudlu, who's on his own, 4.5 out of 5. And the other big game, he defeated Richard Rapport. The other big game was that Abhimanyu Mishra defeated Gukesh, world champion Gukesh. So Mishra is on 4 along with 3 others. Big game today, Marsudlu against Erigaisi. I'll be catching up with the results fairly soon. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. I think an absolutely fascinating endgame.